Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Kalota. If you do not know me at all and haven't seen me on this, I am known for my political blog, The Political Veteran, and I also come on AHG as well for news correspondent stuff. And that is what I will be talking about right now, because a lot of things has happened since President Trump has been inaugurated, and he has been sending out a flurry of executive orders. A lot of these executive orders do pertain to the military and also veterans as well. So that's pretty much what I'll be talking about. And that's for this half hour. This next half hour, I will talk more about that stuff as the political veteran. And because trust me, we have a lot to go over. So one of the things that has been happening for military people, especially current military people, are the trans ban that has recently been signed last Monday. And this has been something that we have been knowing that would come up because this was something that was in the Project 2025 booklet, which I have spoken a lot on this at length. And I highly recommend for y'all to look it up, Project 2025, because there are a lot of executive orders that are following it to the T. So that's one of the things that's been happening. So with the trans ban and those executive order pertaining to those people that are serving openly as trans in the military. First, I really want to give you a little bit of back history. So for those that are not aware, there have been trans people that served in the military and they were closeted. So they were serving in the military as trans. Often they get their transition before they serve, before they join, and kind of sneak it through, or they try to go as is or whatever. There's way there. I mean, there's trans people that happened in Civil War and served during then, and we find out much later, or we find out later. So there are a lot of things that can happen, and there's a lot of people that have served that were trans that we were never aware of. And there were trans people that were serving before the official ban on trans people serving openly was rescinded in 2016. That was rescinded by President Obama. And there was a lot of literature on that. There was a study. There was Joint Chiefs, and many of the generals of each of the services had been in a congressional hearing over this. So there's a lot of literature on what they believe, how it would affect the military if an openly trans person served within a unit. So there's a lot of information out there for that side. And then there's information on the other side, because after President Trump was elected, and not even a year later after the ban was lifted, he rescinded that and basically reinstated the trans ban. He couldn't quite affect those people that were serving openly in the military that they were already in. He couldn't affect those. He had an issue trying to remove those from the military. So when President Trump lost the 2020 election, President Biden rescinded, or basically lifted the trans ban again, or lifted the trans ban that Trump instituted. And in this one, I will read from President Biden's executive order. Now, it's Executive Order 14004 of January 25th, 2021, and it's titled Enabling All Qualified Americans to Serve in Their Country in Uniform. This is good. It might be a little long, but just bear with me. It's really great that if you read the context of both sides, I will read President Biden's and then I'll read President Trump's. President Biden says that all Americans who are qualified to serve in the armed forces in the United States should be able to serve. An all-volunteer force thrives when it is composed of diverse Americans who can meet the rigorous standards for military service, and an inclusive military strengthens our national security. It is my conviction, President Biden, as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, that gender identity should not be a bar to military service. Moreover, that there is substantial evidence that allowing transgender individuals to serve in the military does not have any meaningful negative impact on the armed forces. To that end, in 2016, a comprehensive study requested by the Department of Defense found that enabling transgender individuals to serve openly in the United States military would have only a minimal impact on military readiness and healthcare costs. The study also concluded that open transgender service has had no significant impact on operational effectiveness or unit cohesion in foreign militaries. Side note, there have been foreign militaries that have allowed openly trans people to serve. UK, Israel, Australia, and I believe Canada have already allowed them to serve. So it's not the US doing this for the first time. They're not striking it out there without any knowledge. They've seen it from other countries, and pretty good countries that we like to, that are allies and compare ourselves to. I mean, really great militaries. So back to his executive order. Based on this information, the Secretary of Defense concluded in 2016 that permitting transgender individuals to serve openly in the military was consistent with military readiness and with strength through diversity, such as transgender service members who could meet the required standards and procedures should be permitted to serve openly. Secretary of Defense also concluded that it was appropriate to create a process that would enable service members to take steps to transition gender while serving. So it goes on, but what it does is that it actually allows them to do it. And I'll let you know that the study that I actually was able to find, it was actually from the RAND study, the RAND Corporation that did the study. And it is pretty good. You can look up, I believe for the release was June 30, 2016. And they have the studies out there on the RAND Corporation site. So I highly recommend, if you guys are interested in finding out really how that would affect the military, I do recommend for you to read that. It's very interesting material. Now, to President Trump's. Okay. Make sure I have the right one. Yes. Okay. So he wrote, the United States military, of course, this was signed last Monday. I am taking this from the White House website. And so I don't have the actual executive order number because it hasn't been inputted on the Federal Register yet. So FYI, but you can look this up on the White House website, and it is titled Prioritizing Military Excellence and Readiness. He says the U.S. military has a clear mission to protect the American people and our homeland as the world's most lethal and effective fighting force. Success in this existential mission requires a singular focus on developing the rigorous warrior ethos, and the pursuit of military excellence cannot be diluted to accommodate political agendas or other ideologies harmful to unit cohesion. Recently, however, the armed forces have been afflicted with radical gender ideology to appease activists, unconcerned with the requirements of military service like physical and mental health, selflessness, and unit cohesion. Long-standing DoD policy, insert instructor number here, provides that it is the policy of the DoD to ensure that service members are free of medical conditions or physical defects that may reasonably be expected to require excessive time lost from duty for necessary treatment or hospitalization. As a result, many mental and physical health conditions are incompatible with active duty, from conditions that require substantial medication or medical treatment to bipolar and related disorders, eating disorders, suicidality, and prior psychiatric hospitalization. Consistent with the military mission and longstanding policy expressing a false gender identity divergent from the individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. Beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adoption of the gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor his falsehood. It is not consistent with the humility and the selflessness required of a service member. Again, this is the words from President Trump in his executive order, not my words, and not the words of America's Heroes Group, just reading this off to you. For the sake of our nation and the patriotic Americans who volunteer to serve it, military service must be reserved for those mentally and physically fit for duty. The armed forces must adhere to mental and physical health standards to ensure our military can deploy, fight, and win, including the austere conditions and without the benefit of routine medical treatment or special provisions. So, what they're saying, what they also say into the executive order is that they rescind the executive order that President Biden has written. So that basically removes the ability to serve while as openly trans in the military service. And then he has other stipulations and other things required. So, Secretary of Defense shall promptly issue directives for the DoD to end invented and identification-based pronoun usage to best achieve the policy outlined in Section 2 of this order. And within 30 days of this order, the Secretary shall identify all additional steps and issue guidance necessary to fully implement this order, and submit to the President through the Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs to a report that summarizes these steps. I'm not done. There's another one. So, and it includes, absent extraordinary operational necessity, armed forces shall neither allow males to use or share sleeping, changing, or bathing facilities designated for females, nor allow females to use or share sleeping, changing, or bathing facilities designated for males. Specifically saying that trans women cannot shower in women's shower rooms or, use those bathroom facilities, and vice versa. Trans men cannot use the men's showers, and so on. So, and then it includes within 30 days of the issuance of the respective updates, directives, guidance, and other subsections, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall also work on these as well. Lots of legalese, but basically including the Coast Guard, because if those that do not know, the Coast Guard does not go under the DoD. They actually fall under the Department of Homeland Security. So they actually need to have that special little thing in there to make sure that Homeland Security will follow those orders as well. Because if it only says the Secretary of Defense, Homeland Security is doesn't say I have to do anything. So you have to specifically say that. So what does that mean for our current people openly serving as trans in the military? That means if you were born a woman and then you transition to a man, you would still have to use the women's facilities. Now, from when I remember when I served, there was no identifier added to your personnel record. You would have to go digging into your people's medical records to do this, to find out if they're trans. People may know that they're openly trans, and that could be it. Some people I know that have transitioned, they didn't tell anyone, especially if they came to a new unit and nobody knows them. They didn't tell anyone they were trans. And honestly, that's okay. They don't have to tell them that. So there might be a really difficult sticky wicket there on trying to enforce that part of the policy. We'll have to sit and see and wait on how we are going to do this, how they are going to do this. It's very reminiscent of the security bathrooms issues that keeps coming up whenever trans people are known to be serving in an area or working in an area, and people bring up the bathrooms safety. This came up when a congresswoman from Maryland was elected, and she is trans, was born a man, and openly out and identifies as a woman. And so in return to her being elected, there was a congresswoman, that cis-born woman, congresswoman, tried to institute a law that only born women could use the women's bathrooms in the government facilities. So it's one of those things that we tend to hear often. That bill I don't think has been reintroduced because it was introduced last congressional session. I haven't heard of it being reintroduced, but it wouldn't surprise me if it comes up soon. There has been a flurry of congressional bills that's been submitted. So I've been barely keeping track of those that are military and veteran related, and trying to keep up with everything else has been a little difficult. So I'm sorry, that one I'm not sure of. So, and in return to this executive order, there has been a report released, I believe it was yesterday, that from AP News, they actually said that 6 active duty service members file a lawsuit challenging Trump's troop transgender ban. So they are working in... they're working with 2 firms, and that is, oh goodness, their acronyms are listed, and I'm trying to remember for, I believe one of them is the National Center for Lesbian Rights, and the other one is GLAAD, and I can never remember what that one is. Let me look. Okay, GLAAD is GLBTQ, Legal Advocates and Defenders. It's a nonprofit like the other one. That basically helps with legal rights and fighting lawsuits, basically, and filing for their own human rights. So they filed a challenge to the executive order in the District of Columbia. So the Pentagon said that it does not comment on pending or ongoing litigation, but will fully execute and implement all directives outlined by the executive order issued by the president, ensuring that they are carried out with the utmost professionalism, efficiency, and in alignment with the national security objectives. There isn't any official data of how many transgender personnel are currently serving in the military. There's a rough estimate, but the estimate is probably in the thousands. It's very possible it's higher than that. So it's kind of hard because, like I said, that there is no way to actually, there's not anything in the personnel records, anything in the personnel systems. You can't look up, and there's no signifier for a trans person on their administrative records. And there might be the only way I can tell that they could probably tell if they are is if they were looking up in medical records, and most likely if they were receiving the hormone treatments. But you can also run into issues with that because a lot of times hormone treatments are given to people that are not trans. For me, I'm going to be starting a breast cancer treatment program, treatment and prevention treatment, because I am very high risk, and that is an estrogen blocker, tamoxifen, which is often what trans people use, basically trans men use, to basically be a woman, be a man, and no longer have the estrogen going through. And they usually will take T as well, take testosterone. So it's that might cause some issues because then you can accidentally identify somebody who is not trans and then target, and basically that can be another lawsuit waiting to happen that I can see, and that can go very, very bad. And also it could also be a issue with HIPAA. And so it's going to be quite an interesting thing to watch. And so that's going to be ongoing. I know that that's going to be something that I'll probably be talking about a lot, hoping to bring more people on to talk about that one, for people to really try to talk about and reflect on, to help with a lot of people to estimate what the heck's going on here. I will say a few things from the RAND Corporation's report, especially on their press release. They have a really great summary. They said that the additional healthcare costs can range between 2.4 million and 8.4 million, representing an approximate 0.13% increase in the DoD costs for these transition-related surgeries and ongoing treatment for the active component service members. And the other thing that I know that is an issue with trans soldiers is that when they have these surgeries, then they transition and they go on to their treatments. They have to be non-deployable. And the amount of time to be non-deployable is quite long. So that is one of the issues that has been raised, which honestly is an understandable one. People that are not deployable are often seen as not service members because they can't deploy, they can't do their jobs when they are called. So that is one of the things that has been the big con against trans people serving in the military. Let's see. Trying to find out in terms of readiness. Rand estimates that 10 to 130 active component members each year could have reduced deployability as a result of gender transition related treatments. This amount is negligible relative to the 102,500 non-deployable soldiers in the Army alone in 2015, 50,000 of them in the active component. So that's very small of how many people that would actually be part of the non-deployables to do the little increase. For somebody that used to work on staff teams and had to brief non-deployables a lot, it is very annoying to have to do that a lot because you have to explain why each individual person cannot deploy. It's often medical. Sometimes it's an easy fix. Sometimes it's the long-term fix. And some people just get injured and it takes them years to finally get processed out or recover. And that's often what happens. And that's the frustrating part that happens when you are working on a staff team. So I feel them on a little bit of the moaning and groaning when it comes to the non-deployable side. So, okay. Now, let's do a little bit of a turn at the end because I'd like to give a little bit of time towards the VA secretary's nomination hearing he had last week. He's going to be coming up for the nomination vote, probably the end of this week or early next week. It hasn't been scheduled yet. There's been a lot of nomination hearings this week because RFK was today. I know Tulsi Gabbard is coming up and also Kash Patel. So those are been taking a lot of the attention, and I haven't seen any any scheduled votes going on for that. But Doug Collins, he's a former representative, was picked to be nominated for the VA secretary. And this hearing was quite interesting. It was very relaxed and very calm compared to such hearings like RFK's today and also Pete Hegseth's, because there was a lot of vitriol in both of those. There was a lot of protests, a lot more in Pete Hegseth's than RFK's. They were able to shut RFK's protests down really quickly and was able to continue on. And so Representative Doug Collins is awaiting his confirmation vote in the Senate to hopefully become the 12th VA secretary. Now, there are a lot of things that veterans are looking forward to seeing what they can get out of him, what he can improve. A recent report from the VA report showed that approximately 6,400 veterans died by suicide in 2022, a small increase from 2021, and the lowest mark in 12 in the previous 14 years. But however, veterans are still dying by suicide at almost double the rate of civilian population. So we're really hoping that he can try to help with the healthcare the mental health care issues that's been going on. Another one would be the veteran homelessness. A January 2024 count showed that almost 33,000 veterans who experience homelessness. And that's actually pretty good because that's 7.5% less than 2023. An estimated number of veterans experience homelessness has actually decreased by 55.6% since 2010. So they're hoping to just keep increasing and knocking it down to try to get it as low as possible. And so there has been some issues on homelessness recently on stemming problems from the VA supportive housing funds being appropriated to migrants. So that's been a hot topic that's been going on. It's been disputed by the Biden administration that they did use some funds, but that was when it was contracted by ICE and there was an agreement there. So it was something that it's hard to explain to somebody that doesn't understand the funding side, but we haven't seen any big issues with it affecting any veterans individually. So we'll see how this one goes. There has been some things that's been coming up with the infrastructure for the VA, hoping to get some improvements on that. There's been a lot of facilities that are going up, and because of the PACT Act, because that included a lot of funding for infrastructure for the VA, not pork barrel spending. Sorry, Senator Pat Toomey was lying there, but a lot of facilities have been breaking ground and actually building now. The problem is that there's also other facilities that probably need to be downgraded or closed because of the dwindling or declining populations of veterans in that area. I'm hoping that that is something that will come up because the Trump administration really wants to try to cut costs, lower the amount of federal jobs, and try to decrease spending. That would be something that needs to be done, is to try to cut costs, is to close clinics where there is like very low veteran population to be serviced. So they don't need, I'm sorry to be mean, but if there's not enough veterans to really be serviced there, they really should try to reallocate them to areas where they need it, where they really do need it, and that can save a lot of costs. So keep an eye out. Of course, the next thing on that article was balancing the budget. So